quite frankly, we cannot continue to compete in a world where we have that number of players in markets. We're all chasing the same subscriber, all providing similar services. We lay on top of voice or whatever, or whether it's traditional mobile voice or fixed line voice. As far as I'm concerned with voice, it doesn't matter. But as far as the regulator is concerned, I've got a license. I have to manage the world according to that license. And yet there are other people who manage the world with no license. That creates a very different dynamic within the marketplace. So when we look at what's happening, the market is moving much more quickly. The adoption of IP-based solutions is moving at a far greater rate than the economic management of markets. So there needs to be change. We need to think about how we move regulation forward. This is about policy principle. Policy sets law. So it sets a direction, and the law is an enactment of that policy direction. Regulation is an enactment of a telecoms policy. But we shouldn't be talking about telecoms policies. We should be talking about digital policies. We should be talking about digital inclusion as a horizontal enabler to economic development. There have been many studies that said every 10% you can increase penetration, you can get 1.x% of growth in GDP. They're very salutary numbers. They make governments sit and think that if I can do this better, my economic growth will be stronger. At a time when oil prices are low, we have to look how to diversify on an economic basis. Again, telecoms is an enabler. So, we have to think of telecoms no longer as a vertical, but as a vertical and a horizontal. And if I don't start to think of that in the policy terms, I'm going to remain thinking about it as vertical. Where's that going to lead? It leads us to a situation where telecoms regulators remain terribly regulated, but telecoms operators remain terribly regulated. Unless the communications world, the telecom operator is obliged to invest in capital to build new networks, to launch new products and services, 5G, 6G, whatever comes in the future. Yet the others can piggyback on the back of it. I have to pay taxes, they don't. I have to pay universal service fees, they don't. My customers have to pay taxes on top of what I already pay, whether it's GST, VAT, whether it's luxury taxes. That doesn't happen in the OTT world. So the whole telecoms world becomes burdened very, very quickly and disadvantaged, and therefore the lack of funds. So where is it? So consolidation starting. If we look at the African continent over the last 12 months, I know probably 6 consolidation activities going on. Some of which are completed, some of which are. But what comes with that is every time there's an in-country consolidation, there has to be a regulator, as competition powers, the anti-actions created, strengthening of the dominant position. Use of dominant position as a consequence. And that could come through spectrum, it could come through sheer scale, it could come through pricing activities, it can come through bundling and things of this nature, so product launches, it can come through sites. There are many different areas you can look at and say these are areas of potential dominance. But, here's the big but. Are the regulatory authorities and the competition authorities adequately equipped to deal with that assessment? And without wishing to be derogatory to any of those authorities, the likely answer is not entirely. And that's because they've never been through this before. Industry doesn't go through large amounts of consolidation or large amounts of mergers very often. The telecoms industry, like its birth, or the birth of mobile, mergers and consolidation activities are going to come in a wave. So those authorities need to start thinking very carefully about how we manage that future. What they're doing now is very simple. If we live in a competitive world, do wish to move forward at a greater pace. As regulators and as lawmakers, they have to manage that process as well, to ensure that countries are adequately equipped to be able to deal with this. Now, let's go back to this whole concept of horizontal enabler. If we look at that, it's very, very simple. I can look at education. I can look at healthcare. I can look at business enablement in terms of process management and things of that nature. I can look at end-to-end services, the Internet of Things. Without telecommunications networks, most of those things will not have the future that we anticipate of them. So we have to ensure that the investments that are being made are sensible. And sensible doesn't mean, is it the right investment to make? It means, is it economically efficient and sustainable in the long term? So let's look at simple policy things that have to change. We invest, as Eti said, $300 to $400 million a year in building our networks. So it's not an insubstantial amount of money. We put that together across the world and we're talking billions of dollars in capital investments. Yet the one critical thing that is missing from us is spectrum. Without spectrum, the future of mobile doesn't exist as we want it to. It remains in a world of limited data and voice. It doesn't move into this world of the Internet of Things, where everything's connected and everything's working together. Yet, spectrum is seen as a scarce resource, and it is. But it's sold at a premium. It's seen as a means of enhancing financial returns for the country, and not seen as an enabler. So as a consequence, the consumer is damaged, the industry is damaged, and then the country is damaged. We will not get digital enablement. We won't get the benefits that come from that coming through in terms of job creation. We will not get the services that 5G has to offer. Simple lesson of WRC 15. Mobile still has the same allocation frequency as it was signed in 1988. Okay? That's terrifying from a mobile operator's perspective, because we need substantial more. Now I'm going to tell times about what I can say for now. I hope that has given you some thoughts. I'd love to take questions at the end and develop the thoughts further for you. Without policy, there is no future. Without the future of telecoms, there is no digital enablement. There's a very simple equation. So we have to get the policy equation right. We have to move away from ex ante, prescriptive restriction, into competition enabled world. Where we all compete on a level playing field, whether this is in the cloud or whether this is on a fixed or mobile network. I include fixed within it very clearly. All part and parcel of the same equation we need to work together. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Two questions now. The first question I have for you would be, how is all this changing with broadcast regulation? Telecom and broadcast are converging now, television, etc. So does it make it even more messy now, or it's not tricky? What should countries think about?
In some respects, it becomes more clouded. And I don't mean that in the sense of the cloud, but the thought process is more clouded. Because traditionally, we've seen broadcast as a very separate world to communications. So, one to many, one to one. As we move into the future, those spectrum frequency ranges that have been traditionally used by broadcast are very, very valuable frequency ranges for the telecommunications world. Those services previously provided by broadcast can be equally well provided, or better provided, shall I say, in the normal communications world across mobile networks, across internet-based networks. Now, I know broadcasters will disagree with me on that, but let's just look at the simple maths of it. The digital dividend freed up a huge amount of spectrum. So digital broadcasting is a far more efficient way of moving things. Analog broadcasting is extremely inefficient. It sits in the digital world and the radio carrier world, then any communications network can manage that problem. The device is what's important. So whether you've got this type of thing, or a smartphone, or a feature-rich older phone, listen to the radio, I can watch television programs. Doesn't matter what part of the world I'm in, I can get them here. So that broadcasting world has really converged. So we need to think about the regulation of that comes together, particularly the management of spectrum in those areas.
Thanks, Robert. If there are any other questions, you may ask now. Please.
Thank you. My name is James from CILM, the Ministry of ICT and Chief Technology Officer. What advice would you give to regulators when you look at the traditional broadcasting environment and this concept of IPTV? Now, when you look at the two, some regulators will tend to practice some amount of protectionism for the traditional broadcasters, whilst in so doing, you are underserving the less privileged to receive the services from mobile platform, which is much more affordable. What would be your advice in trying to strike a balance such that the situation becomes normal? Because as is right now, it's abnormal because a lot of regulators are seeing IPTV solutions as a destroyer. So what kind of advice would you give to regulators?
To be honest, I am an ex-regulator. So some people call me a recovering regulator, whatever, but it's very interesting when you look at the dichotomy of views that come together. So I agree with you on one side, some regulators see IPTV as everything. They tend to be broadcasting regulators, okay, not telecoms regulators. My view is very simple, as a regulator and even as FSAs. What we need to look at is where the welfare benefit gain is the greatest. I'm going to try and keep away from the economic jargon that goes with it, put that in simple terms. What delivers the most benefit to a consumer? At the end of the day, we're dealing with a national scarce resource. So when we look at how that should be allocated and used, we have to look at the consumer and say, what's he going to get from this? If I'm going to reserve this amount of spectrum to deliver a very small number of TV channels or radio channels, where I can deliver the same number from this amount of spectrum, roughly an eighth, then it's very clear that the benefit sits on the consumer if I move that onto the communications network. There is one exception, and that's the question of national security and national ability of a government to reach its nation in one shot. So often we find that on the broadcast side, there's an obligation to provide that service. But that can be managed in different ways as well. We just have to open our eyes and see how it can be done. So on the telecom side, we have something called national critical infrastructure. So when regulators and governments declare a network as critical national critical infrastructure, then certain obligations come to it with that, which relate to the availability of the network and the service quality of that network, particularly in times of emergency and disaster. So there is a solution to it. It just needs time for those regulators to move forward. WRC 15 is a good example. I'll come back to that from earlier because one of the things that was protected in WRC 15 was the existing broadcasting rights. In reality, it's protected for another 5 to 7 years. That's it. That protection will be lost then. We'll remove those and telecommunication. So there's a time window. Politics got involved, industry got involved on different sides, and that was a protection that was afforded in those two.
Thanks, Robert. Round of applause, please, for an excellent opening conversation. We'll take questions after this. Then we next speaker up on the stage, Philip Zinder will please come. Philip Zinder is the Managing Director for Telecom Central and Southern Africa, and he'll be giving us his insights now on regulatory policy for the African continent. Round of applause, please, for Philip Zinder.
Thank you. It's more like a workshop with actually in front of me, so if there are questions in between, feel free, please. Okay, well, we're still waiting for the event. So today I'm
I'm going to talk about digital change. And I think we have discussed already OTTs slightly, or we have heard at least about regulatory environments and how we should actually scope the telecommunication industry from a regulatory perspective to basically enable investments. However, from a telecom as a management consultancy based or headquartered in Germany, we are in Africa, working in Africa for about 20 years now. I'm also proud to announce that we will open an office in Nigeria this year, and the views I'm going to talk about today are very much more on a digital horizon, what is going to change in the bigger scope of things in the future. And I think the various conversations I have with CEOs, managing directors in the telecommunications space, all of them in Africa say, hey, our business is still voice-driven. And I think this will drastically change. We'll see the change coming much more quicker and more agile in the near future, also in Africa, and not just in the developed countries like the United States or Europe or even parts of the APEC region. So talking about digital change, I think the first thing that I want to say is in 10 years' time from now, over 40% of the Fortune 500 will not be in business anymore. And that's not just me saying that. I think it's a very famous one that came up over the last 3 years, and I totally believe in that. Digital change will happen, will also happen in Africa, and I think it's a chance, it's a window of opportunity for telco operators, for regulators, and for ISPs to basically change their business model. And we'll look a little bit into it today. How can we actually participate in that opportunity? So if we look into it just at the overall picture, and we see on the very left some old figures, and on the right side we see figures of 2025. So if you just have a look at the simple piece of information here, it's basically everybody in Africa saying our ARPUs come from voice, therefore our revenue comes from voice. If you look at the global scale, this has changed, ladies and gentlemen. So the biggest revenue nowadays, or in a couple of years' time, will definitely come from data. And that has an impact on the investments in the telecommunication infrastructure. So I separated the presentation a little bit into 3 different stages, basically. So I'll talk a little bit about infrastructure and platforms, about user experience, and then also the opportunity that I see for telco operators in that space. So if we talk about infrastructure, there is basically, and you can all see it, actually can't read it out to be honest from here, but basically Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, he approached basically India from an infrastructure perspective. And they have failed in the first step because there were some things that didn't work out on the government side. But however, he still says that he wants to connect the people. And one of the most valued and most, or guys with the most impact in the social media of nowadays, if he says a statement like that he wants to connect the people of India, believe me, this will become reality. So, Facebook, even 5 years ago, we never saw in the space of infrastructure. We saw them as the social media kings coming up. But they now are not waiting for the infrastructure investors anymore. They don't wait for an Etisalat or an Airtel or an MTN in Africa anymore to necessarily deploy infrastructure and CapEx. So if this is not happening strong enough and quick enough, they will do it themselves. Because Facebook, or basically the company behind it, they are earning enough money from social media, and every user they connect, they at the moment have 1.5 billion people that they connect. But only 3 billion people in the world actually have access to the internet. So by, for example, in India, we're talking about 1 billion people, adding onto that, maybe even if you bring 50%, 500 million users onto that, that's a lot of revenue, and that's why they're looking. So change of game basically. So if you have a look here basically of what they're doing, WhatsApp, Instagram, then basically I talked a little bit about the infrastructure piece in the middle already. And the latest thing that is happening, and I think they acquired them for about $2 billion US, is Oculus, right? Virtual reality. This is happening, guys. And all the big players that we know, like Facebook, Google, etc., they're putting investments into these areas because this is going to change the world. I mean, if you look at the top-end devices of Samsung right now, virtual reality glasses, they are actually brilliant. I've tested them myself. And this will come and change our day-to-day routine, not just in private life, but also in business life. Going further and looking at Google. So Google has also heavily invested into various areas. And since we're talking about infrastructure and platforms, you can see on the very left that the Project Loon is something that they looked at. There was actually like a trial that they did in Cape Town, so in South Africa. So it's not something that's fancy somewhere else in the world. But they not, and I like that from the previous speaker, they're not looking after regulation. They just do. They don't wait for the regulatory environment to be perfect. Yes, they have struggles in some African countries, and I think it may not be as big, but believe me, they don't wait. In the middle, you also see some drones, basically, solar-driven, that should deliver 5G services in the next couple of years. Obviously, this will come with a delay for Africa, I think, but there's a very high chance that they actually will provide connectivity in Africa. And in the United States, they have actually started, or not just started, deployed successfully a lot of fiber infrastructure. So again, Google was never an infrastructure player. Only in recent years, because maybe prices are too high, quality is not good enough, and it's only a fraction of their business model. Because 20 million capex for Google, there's nothing about it. They're laughing about it. Okay? So watch out what they are doing in the infrastructure space, even in Africa. However, what all of these companies have in the client interaction and customer-facing environment, you can actually see here that these organizations, especially Facebook and Google, have the most interaction with clients. So this is normalized over a billion clicks or something like this, that you see basically the blue bubbles, the orange bubbles, and the gray ones are other players in the market basically. But Facebook is the leading conglomerate of applications and companies that is basically having the most customer interaction. And they have a lot of data about all of us in the group, believe me so. And they're using it much, much better than telco operators are currently doing. Because they're bundling customer information from various data centers, various information areas, etc. Maybe one thing on the right side of it, as I said, is Google, right? Google, just to use a different example, Google Ventures has also invested $258 million US into Uber. Right? So what are they doing with that? They're using the data information of Uber. How are we driving? How is your daily routine of getting to work or having your meetings? So they can create in future a self-driving car that already knows our patterns of behavior. And this is the reality of the future that will come. All of that together needs infrastructure, so it's just a question that they do it or somebody else does. However, if you look at this chart, what has already started is that that a lot of evaluations have basically gone down. So if you look at the left side, you have Google, Amazon, you have Facebook, you have Apple even. And Apple over the last couple of months, although it was the end device over the last 5 years, players, I would say, has actually fallen behind. Why? Because they have an ecosystem that is closed, and they don't have a growth strategy anymore. So this is rapidly changing valuations and the trust from the investor side of where they're giving their money. So if they look at Amazon, if they look at Google, if they look at Facebook, there's still a growth story because it's an open environment that they are working with, and they have a lot of partners and separate investors, and it's software, not hardware or servers. On the other side, you see, just to give you an example of the unicorns, basically, you see Uber, we heard about them. I think 62 billion was the latest valuation of the company. 62 billion US dollars. Airbnb with roughly, I think, 27, I can't really see from here, 27 billion US dollars. And Snapchat is also something that's coming up. However, why I list that here is, I think for operators, fixed line mobile operators, it's too late to really partner with Google, Facebook, all big guys. They don't need you anymore. You may need them. So it's the same with the unicorns. It's too late. They are far bigger than ever imagined, and they don't require you. So if you have a look at the bottom, there are many small startup companies that have still high valuations. And some of them can be particularly interesting for mobile operators, fixed line operators, etc., to create a unique experience to their customer base. Because if you bring them into your ecosystem, bring them to Africa, that can help smaller organizations from the Silicon Valley. So, can we just have a look at this video? To just give you an example of what the future can look like. And that is an example from Amazon.
Alexa, alarm off. Alexa, what's on the calendar today?
Alexa's not responding to us, it seems. Maybe we leave it out. I can show it to you later as well. But at least we should go back to the slides then.
You have 12 events scheduled. Alexa, call me Uber. Your Uber will arrive in 2 minutes. Alexa, what's the weather like today? There's a 100% chance of showers. Alexa, you're my closest speaker. Okay, here. Alexa, it's time to reorder some paper towels. Okay, order placed. Alexa, play my garage music. Play your garage playlist from current music. Alexa, listen here. Playing some jazz from current music. Alexa, who's this? This is Gifted Basket by Long Tom. Alexa, turn that up.
Alexa, ask Alberto to send me my last order.
Okay, order placed.
Hey, isn't that Jason Schwartzman?
No, it's not him. I would know what that was him.
I'm pretty sure it's him.
Okay, Alexa, who stars in Mozart in Heaven? The stars include Malcolm McDowell, Jason Schwartzman.
See? Okay.
Alexa, change the bedroom temperature to 65 degrees. Okay. Alexa, that's all. Okay. Alexa, good night. Good night. Sleep tight.
So yeah, that just as one example where voice recognition is heading to be honest, it's not at the level where they show it right now. I've seen the product in the Valley. It's not there yet at this level. but it will come. They're seriously working on that. They have heavy investments behind it, and I think when there is connectivity, and maybe that's one of the challenges in Africa, to be honest, if there is connectivity, the user experience will be much more important. So just because I'm running slightly out of time here, just 2-3 more examples, and I won't go much into detail. Uber, we talked already about. I said Google Venture invested into that. They're really taking information away from that. It is user information that is valuable to them. And a lot of companies in the ICT space can actually work with them. I have a lot of discussion about big data with mobile operators, and they say, no, we're segmenting our customers perfectly. No, they don't. They still do it traditionally, believe me. But there are guys out there that do it for you. They bring different data sources together and give you back the data in a more usable, more fashionable way. Next one, I was actually operator. Maybe you check it out afterwards because of time. But it's actually just $10 million valuated company that's just on the verge to come out. And I think one of the Google founders is also part of the brains behind this. So that's something hot to watch in the future. And when I talk about the telco opportunity, where is it actually laid? So there are basically 3 learnings. Basically understand the customer behavior, right? And create frictionless user experience. And that basically created the ecosystems that are flexible and open enough to partner with other institutions, but bring it as a value add to your customers because you're the one operator that can actually provide these kind of services. So if we just have a latest look at the last 2 slides here, T-Mobile, that's something where we had a very good use case. T-Mobile over the last years changed from the number 4 operator of currently attacking number 1 in the market, in the US market. Very difficult space, large investments are critical, it's expensive. But if you look what changed since they basically deployed the carrier strategy, they came from number 4 in a lot of dimensions of quality of the network, etc., to number 1 post 2014. And if you look at their subscriber numbers, that also is a huge turnaround since they deployed the various carrier strategy moves. And we're currently discussing that with the mobile operator here in Sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Philip. That very interesting video reminds me of another video called The Future of Class by Audi. Might have seen that? The Future of Class. It's really to tell you what the world is like when class is everywhere and it's interactive and it's information, all that stuff. Any quick questions for Philip? We have to move on, but if you have any burning questions, this is a good time to say.
Maybe that wasn't harsh to say they don't need you at all, if that was the question. I think there's still space for collaboration. integration, you're absolutely right. But they're not dependent on mobile operators as badly anymore. And to be honest, if I look into the future, I mean, even at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona a couple of months ago, there was harsh discussions between the operators to say, in 20 years we may not exist anymore. So I didn't want to bring it as, of course, as an aspect of the story. But I think the opportunity for cooperation with the larger guys, or the negotiation of commercial setups, as it were, are very difficult, or operators are in a difficult situation. Whereas with smaller, really interesting startups, there is still a potential and the value add from the operators in Africa to say, listen, we have 167 million users that we can gain a new, or you can gain access to. Right? So it's a different battle game. If you say that to Facebook, they say, hey, I have 1.5 billion, and I already have 95% of their users. So I think this is what I meant in terms of opportunity of collaboration.
Thanks. I'm sure this question will help again into this one. I'm going to applause please to Philip Center from Jakarta for a very insightful session on the future of OTT versus telcos. Then we invite the next keynote speaker, Cassidy Woodgate. Cassidy is going to be the next keynote speaker. He is the Chief of New Technologies and Innovation at UNECA. He is going to share with us some of his insights on policy, regulation, networks, and so on. I'm going to applause please for Cassidy. That is Cassidy's presentation, please.
While we wait for the slide, I would like to say that I'm not a business expert. I work with the policy, and basically listening to the interventions of I'm again convinced that what we seek to do at the United Nations Commission of Africa, which is to promote clients, people to work on this continent, is very important. Now, listening to so many people this morning and this afternoon, I feel as though in a restaurant where I'm actually the client and the presenters from that one's world are the chefs, and they present to me and to Africa what we need to consume. And we think that we, on this continent, have to actually have a two-way flow of innovations, two-way flow of things to sell, two-way flow of ideas to propagate.
Cassidy, can we switch to the speaker presentation, not the conference presentation? There's another one which I gave you just a few minutes ago at the point one. It's called Cassidy. This person is on the
And the presentations also reinforce what many of us, at least at this moment, believe, that innovations are not neutral to the context in which they are coming about, or in societies in which they affect the world. As an African, knowing all the challenges our continent faces, listening about voice recognition technology when I don't have, the skills to deal with, basic healthcare needs. I do think that such innovations are perhaps much more suited for those societies where we probably don't have the kind of challenges that we face. So, and that basically informs the presentation I'm going to share with you. Unfortunately, I don't quite have enough to see it, but okay, very good. Now, the Economic Commission of Africa was founded in 1958. As the regional arm of the United Nations Continent. When we are founded, our continent was still ruled by colonial power and there was resistance. The Commission was composed of all the colonial powers in Ethiopia and Nigeria as the free people in Africa at the time. And so we are located in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the economic capital of our continent, and we do quite a lot of things. And one of the things we do is to help our member states to develop innovation policy, to work in the area of ICT, and then to also follow up on the implementation of outcomes of the World Summit on Information Society. Now, one of the things we've tried to do in the recent past is actually to answer ourselves the questions, and we actually promote innovation on our continent. And if so, In what areas? There was a lot of talk about ICT hubs as though basically apps can actually transform a continent. Apps are useful, ICT are useful, but so are other things too. And so we decided that we needed to work in the area of health, essentially because that's an area where we've not done too well. Where the technologies are quite common, enable us to overcome many of our healthcare challenges. So we started at ECA to develop what we call biomedical engineering innovation school for young people. As a lot of not just creating skills, but also dealing with youth and employment problem. So in effect, my presentation on that part of the organizers is actually a case study to enable you to see what we have tried to do in trying to promote innovation among young people. Now, the outline is given on the screen. Now, health on this continent is a major challenge. Many of you may have looked already at the reports. You may find that our company is not doing especially well on the health than we do. We continue to have vaccine-preventable diseases killing young people. We have high mortality rates across all age groups. We have a small number of healthcare providers with hospitals and physicians and pharmacists. And then we have low level of manpower development in all areas. But, and that is very important, the health sector also presents, or in our view, is an innovators and entrepreneurs kind. Now, let me give you a little bit of a context of what we basically know, and it makes up what we want to work with. Our conference leaders not too long ago adopted a long-term strategy for the content called the about the structural transformation of this content, about such transformation that should at least help us to reverse the unidirectional flow of conversations about ICT, new technology, and so on. And the UN also adopted in September last year the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. What is important about these new frameworks is an emphasis on technology as a means of implementation, as a means to enable us to get to where we want to get. Also important to recognize that this was also a very highly controversial area for implications because advanced countries were not willing and still were not willing to actually share technologies or to relax the very stringent intellectual property rights regimes. Indeed, when the legislations were on, the frequent response from the developed countries was, well, technologies and IPRs are private property. We cannot force the firms or companies to actually relax or to share their technology with you. That's something that you have to negotiate with them. And that negotiation with private entities is not very easy. Now, in looking at the issues of health, we are fairly convinced that we need to undertake research. We need to understand how old methods can help us to overcome problems. And we also need to create incentives. And somebody who spoke earlier before me was speaking about incentives, regulation, and all of that. And we also clicked on health because technologies in the health sector are combining technologies. And in fact, they bring together the issue that we're talking about digital economy. And now, we then decided that we needed to set up what we call biomedical engineering innovations and entrepreneurship program. And what we did was essentially, we looked at many schools in Eastern Africa. We found that most of them do not have biomedical engineering curricula, do not produce biomedical engineering students for graduates as well. Many could not prepare simple medical devices such as X-ray machines or fabricate hearing aids or basically even hospital beds. And then what we then did was to set up this program where we had curriculum, which generic curriculum, which basically was discussed in University of Stellenbosch, South Africa, and many other universities, there were three of them, and adopted this curriculum, and then basically developed it for amended to suit the particular needs. That's about University of Nairobi, University of Mumbai. So right now we have about 17 universities in this curriculum. in this program. And what we then do is we take advantage of ICT to build collaboration across borders, across geographical constraints. We are students at this university can work with students at university in Nairobi, Uganda, to think about a product, a healthcare product, or to use the word telecom, a healthcare solution that addresses an identified healthcare problem in the country. And I'll give an example. One of such things was essentially that in many countries, in spite of the prevalence of insecticide-treated dead nets, the prevalence of malaria remains very high. And one of the kids in our program thought about the solution. Why was the prevalence of malaria still very high like Uganda? And she thought that, well, it's because the bed nets are very difficult to handle. That when you put them up, they're not portable, you cannot take them. So she came up with an idea of actually condensing the bed net and making it look like an umbrella that could be taken around from the village to the city to other places. That can then be spread out in order to do with malaria. What we did then was actually to help her write a business proposal and then match her up with people who are interested in funding the program. And today she has become an entrepreneur in Uganda. Now, and we have lots of such examples. There is another kid came up with a way to deal with sleep apnea, with a monitoring device, which of course is based on ICT. And again, we've been able to match this kid with the funding. What we normally do in such instances is the following. We start a very long process of trying to actually inculcate, indicate the idea that it can actually, there should develop the confidence to take whatever it is that it is a solution to that problem, forward, to take it to scale. So over a year, using ICT, using internet and all that, we bring them together, we form teams. And then towards the end of the year, we bring them to a campus for two weeks, where they then work with mentors from National University in Germany, and also from the University of Pisa, and then from local universities, the last one was University. And then during the period, we also bring successful entrepreneurs to talk people, to actually help them to know how to write proposals, to help them to know how to actually think about dealing with IPR, to the extent that some of these systems can be patented, and then to try to match them with people who may be able to provide funding. Now, I'm going to be rounding up. And so what are the lessons we have learned since we need to talk about entrepreneurship and innovation? The first is that innovation for it to succeed must address an unmet need. When I listen to some of the presentations here this morning, I see a classical case of sales law that says, well, supply products on demand. But in some cases, demand should actually, especially on this context, demand should actually stimulate innovation. Innovation should address identified problems, especially in the area of crowd. So innovation must address an unmet need. First, then the second thing is that universities are not as dormant as most of the practical play. But in many cases, the universities can be facilitated as well as adopters of innovation. Many of these universities do not have environmental design programs in the first place. So when we went to them and shared ideas with them, they basically saw this as an innovation and they took on the generic curriculum, advanced it, modified it to meet their needs. And the third is that the private sector and entrepreneurship is actually critical. No matter what we try to do with universities, we try the private sector, we try these fellows who come to actually work with these kids to take their ideas to market. The ideas will not actually fly. And then for the public sector, it's also critical. We have been working with some national patent offices to make it easier to have a window for student innovators so that they can actually go through the processes of getting ideas much faster. And clearly, the process of innovation is difficult to innovate. As I said earlier, they are not neutral to the environment in which innovations come up. And then, what are the important implications? Working across students from different countries and different countries, we found that there is actually a gap between francophone and anglophone students in terms of suggestions, in terms of ways of doing things. We do think that the fact that much of our knowledge can be found in the English language explains that. So we have the legitimate argument that in some countries there is a need to promote competence in the English language. To the extent possible, to make it possible for the young people in this language to have access to this good abundance of language. Then the second is that in many cases, these are very public interest on this content, innovative activity has been multidisciplinary. To be able to bring medical students and engineering students together to try to work on biomedical engineering problems, to look at medical devices. And that, yes, it's pretty great to have, single disciplinary problems that approaches to these issues, but in our context, the main context, multidisciplinary approach can be useful. Then we also do think that there's a need to rethink the geography within countries and higher education institutions. In many cases, we have universities that have very far distances from one another. And so there's very little effort to share research infrastructure. And so we don't kind of build critical masses. Of course, one understands the politics behind some of the education decisions. But if you are to create a critical mass, create a hub, then perhaps the ideas of questions keep coming. We are university and higher education institutions can be everybody can share this infrastructure. Then we also do think that mentorship, matching student innovators with the private sector, and actually being very active in that is an area of policy that sometimes not to promote, and that incentives are very good. So these are essentially what I thought I should share with you. It's not ICT type, but it's also something I think is very important. Thank you for your attention.
Taxation will be part of one of the recommendations, which is the government should give tax breaks to entrepreneurs until they reach profitability of something of that sort. In some countries, you can do that.
Yeah, tax breaks may be useful, but we do think that we have to actually give subsidies, to these young people and to the firms also supporting the much more useful than actually a tax break. The tax break is something that we reinvest into a business, but we don't have the people to reinvest in direct subsidies from the state.
Any other questions? Is there a hand up there, or you just sketch it? No. Thanks for discussing. Discussing is one of the best ways for further questions. Then we have Kashi to come up on stage. Kashi Gondo is the chairman of the Commonwealth IT Group. You can come in this morning already. Kashi will tell us a bit more about some of the investment considerations in that process. Kashi,
thank you, Mohan, and good afternoon, all the ministers. Mine is actually a short intervention on issues of policy, particularly how we do restructuring in the country as we go. But before going to that, from the last set of speeches, or from the last community speakers, there are two keywords that caught my attention, and they are repeated by the speakers: innovation, and another one mentioned connectivity, connecting with people. These are very important keywords in this area. Complex needs was one of the words that are used by the last speaker about innovation, meeting unmet needs. Now, obviously, it is important that when you innovate, but I want to add to that it should be really meet the unmet needs of all mankind. It should enrich all mankind. Should solve a problem that should reach all mankind. If you look at the issue of connectivity also, we have seen one of the videos that allows a lady to money, a lot more efficient. While she's doing another thing, moving from one part of the room to another, is giving commands for another machine to do something for her. Order taxi, order visa, order music, all these all are benefits of what? Benefits of connected society. If we connect our communities, if we connect, however much you want to get that, if you're not connected, you're not going to do it. However much is happening in the United States or anywhere around the world, Silicon Valley or anywhere, if we didn't reach our communities, we haven't achieved much by this kind of governance. So our task is to make sure that what's happening there can eventually reach our communities, can reach our societies, can reach all our people wherever they are, and can also not only meet them, but can be beneficial to them. Because the whole idea of ICT is to make it beneficial to mankind. Make that efficiency saving that is beneficial in one way or another. So, I'm going to be talking about spectrum to enable connectivity, and then how we have been doing things and what we can do to improve connectivity. Now, typically in Nigeria, we have over 16 bands of spectrum. Who doesn't understand what spectrum is here? Let me see a show of hands, please, so that I know where to start. Can I see a show of hands of who doesn't know what spectrum is about? Excellent. So, I'm taking the right way. So, we have 16 bands in particular. Starting, if I may start from the lower, I'm talking about the telecom spectrum bands. Starting from 450, 700, 800, 850, 900, 1.4, 1.8, 1.9, 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 3.3, 3.5. That is the lower part. Of course, we have other bands that are enabling trunk communication. I'm talking about the last mile as well. Now, we have been licensing this spectrum, the policy of licensing of spectrum, and it's enabled by Communication Act of Nigeria 2003. Typically, which are all countries around Africa have one framework or another that manages to issue spectrum licenses. Ours in Nigeria is Section 2003 in particular. Of course, there is another act of 1966, Awareness and Telegraphy Act. There's Broadcast Communication, Broadcast Act also. Now, with all of these acts, they enable management of spectrum. Now, we're doing all of that according to the act. It's also another question for us to look at and see what we are doing and how we can do it a little bit better. We have, in the Communication Act, a clause, a very important one, which is missed out by even the current regulator, and indeed even broadcast and other regulators, particularly Section 121 of the Communication Act, that vested power exclusively and solely to the telecom regulator to manage communication structure. Very important information, but most people don't really realize that such provision. Now that provision actually takes, it's actually, it says, despite provisions of any other written law, the power to manage spectrum is best with telecom regulators. But today, we will have a situation whereby another piece of spectrum, say 700, 800 are managed by broadcast regulator, whereas the telecom regulator is also and space to manage it. Whereas the act is very clear. So it is important that if we're going to have policies, make sure that the framework is right and the framework is fully abided by. That's the provisions of laws should be such that nobody can infringe those conditions. Very important. That's why we are getting a lot of mess in the industry today. If you notice what's happening over the last few years in Nigeria, in particular, with 700 megahertz spectrum, 800 megahertz spectrum, 900 megahertz spectrum, a lot of mess has happened in those bands. That's actually retrogressive, and we're pushing the data backward when we actually became responsible ahead of most countries. All the gains we've achieved from licensing of the 2 gigahertz spectrum, where the expensive 200 and 2 gigahertz using 3G. We've done it very well through public competition, public auction, but with 900, 800, and, but I would say not all 900, some have 900, but 800 and 700 we got in this. Now, how do we do that? No, I'm saying this because there are other African ministers also here, so we can see from my experience, we learn from it, and make sure that our countries do a lot as I done. With the, why I'm saying this is to keep, we in Africa in particular, why I'm saying Africa, because this is Innovation Africa Digital Summit. This is primarily focused on Africa. Now, like I said, connectivity is key. It is not really a privilege, it's actually a necessity to get a people connected, because if you're connected, all those benefits will reach your people. Anyone that's not connected cannot get those benefits of efficiency, benefits of education, benefits of e-health, so many benefits. So the primary thing for the government is to think about getting its people connected. That is first, very important. When you get people connected, then you can think of any other thing that follows from that. Because unless you are connected, then you can't be part of the middle of the whole ecosystem. So it's a necessity. And to get connected in Africa, because of our peculiar situation of economic condition, we don't have the capacity to roll out land infrastructure, we have to rely on spectrum. Now, if we have to rely on the spectrum, we as well make sure that that spectrum, because it's very scarce resource, that should be efficiently managed. Very important. Efficiently managed means that you cannot just keep spectrum. If you are licensed spectrum, if you don't use it, if you don't use it, you should be forced to use it and be given to somebody that can make use of it for benefits. Very important. Even if you buy it for nothing, because some people decide to buy that thing in spectrum, you hold it, waiting for it to rise and then sell it. No. If you want to buy it, make sure you can use it. If you cannot use it, then you must lose it. Very important. Now, how have we been doing licensing of spectrum? What's our policy on that? We have the first allocation from the ITU. We normally go to ITU and apply for allocation of spectrum to our region. That's region 1, where we put from Africa, Middle East, and Europe. Once that is done, we come back home. Then the law provides for a body, in particular in Nigeria, that bulk allocates to different sectors. Because at ITU, we get allocation for aviation, we get allocation for broadband, we get allocation for telecom, we get allocation for many other services. But the Progressive Management Council in Nigeria decides how to implement bulk allocation, that is in this band. I would say, for example, those 16 bands I mentioned, the Progressive Management Council have the power under Section 27, Section 28 of the law, to allocate that band to telecom, or allocate a particular band to broadcast, or to aviation, or to any other service. Now, it has come allocate to who? Not to individuals. We are getting this wrong in this function. When it's individual users. We have a situation whereby ministry sometimes will allocate to individual users without any power under the law to do so. The law gives power to the regulators to do the final assignments. That way, assignment and allocation are two different things. to the last end user, which is operator. Allocation is allocation of the block time to the operator, to the industry. Sales point developers. Very important to have this solution features. When you block allocate, then the regulator assigns to the industry. Now we have a situation where in completely of the law, that is section 121, you can other bodies that are not empowered by law to assign the assignment structure. Now that we must, as much as possible, make sure we don't go that route, because again, we not mess up. Now, it doesn't limit that. The regulators actually do what? It's not only the ministry of the consumer universe or other bodies that are not empowered by law that assignment structure are doing so. Even the regulators sometimes do it wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the discussion. Now, once it is now bulk allocated by the International Council, now it's supposed to be planned, taking cognizance of the situation on ground in the individual countries. Say, for example, in this Nigeria, we know the population we have, we know the kind of design that we can make for structure that can take care of the quality issues. It's not something you just say, oh, I have this structure, this is like just assign, or if like, I will successfully give it to our friends. No. You should first design it in such a way that it is sizable enough to offer relevant quality of service. That is the size of the slots. Now, after that is decided, then we can now decide also on the licensing form. Do you want to license that structure? The objective needs to be very clear. The objective, first primary objective will be connecting more people at all times. Get your people connected. Now, that means we now focus on connecting more money from the structure. But at the same time, you can balance this off by ensuring competition, because competition will give you fair value for the price of that structure. It's not for something so that we run up and decide. Yes, you can do that. There are times when you have to do that, because I'll give you 3 instances of which when we allocate, when I was the regulator, when we allocate something, how we do it. Of course, we have administrative assignment, we have duty content, we have action. These are 3 ways that as people we administrative assignment, duty content, and autonomous close teacher. Now, like I said, you have to design it to get right size so that you don't give an operator a spectrum that will eventually collapse. So we have, remember we have CDM operators in Nigeria. They have only 3.5 megahertz of spectrum. They can't compete with something with 20 megahertz because the cost is different. We have bigger chunk of spectrum, if you like, bigger bands, if you recommend that accommodate more people. But if you have smaller chunk, the option for you is to repeat using that spectrum more. And if you are repeating the use, each time you are repeating, you are putting a new tower. A new tower is a new cost, it's additional cost. So it cannot compete with somebody that can accommodate more with 1 tower compared to somebody that can accommodate the same number with 10 towers. The cost profile is going to be different. Therefore, it is important to have that in mind when you are planning spectrum, to ensure that you plan so that the companies cannot easily collapse in the end. So, that said, and as also mentioned that connected people, then if you look at the market also, do you want to expand the market? Do you want to have more operators in the market, or you want to incorporate the same operators that already have network on the ground that can easily reach to your people? How fast do you want that particular service to reach your people? If you want service to reach people quick enough, sometimes you have to plan in such a way that system operators will get the license. Even looking at the spectrum, you comply in such a way that yes, it's only attractive to system operators. You can even put conditions that makes it only attractive to subsystem or system operators in the country, depending on the objective you want to But primarily, what I want to imply is that we should make sure that competition is promoted in our economy, because only through competition you make sure that you get the right kind of people to get the license to give you proper service. And you need to design your market in such a way that there will not be hyper competition that will actually lead to crush of some of the competitors and eventually have the opposite effect or unplanned consequences of pushing the price high, because eventually you have, again, a situation whereby only few can survive in the industry. So these are some of the issues that I thought are relevant for us to think about and plan for that as we manage our structure. Now, we have new technologies coming through. 5G is being thought of. Now, all of these cannot happen if we don't do structure and allow for links to our people wherever they are. It's very important. That's why we should, as much as we try and release spectrum that will enable these kind of communications to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. First, please, Rashid Babu, Chairman of the IAD. We're going to move on to the next session, which is a panel discussion. Can we have a slide on the panel discussion coming up, please? And then we invite our next speakers to come up on the stage. Also to Nokoro, who is the Director of External Affairs for Intel. I believe Lamin Kamara is on his way here. We also have Mohammed Sharif, CEO of Salcap. Please come up on the stage. And one of the other speakers is also on the way, but let's begin with these two panelists. The topic of this panel discussion is Africa Connected, and we have the name of the speakers up here. Yes, there you go. So these are the first two speakers, and the other one is on his way shortly. So, round of applause, please, for Osodu and Mohammed Sharif. And the topic of this session is Connected Africa. And the first question that I have for both of you is, what are some of the digital gaps that are still very difficult to bridge? For example, we started off with the PC era, then the internet, and the mobile. So digitally, the shifting digital divides are shifting. Which are the most difficult ones you think to bridge? You want to start, Osodu?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Wilson. I represent the U.S. contract to the Nigerian market and development of it's the children of the family called National Marketing Development and Investment Limited. Recently acquired the assets of the internet, export content in Nigeria and so we identified the gap in the market, the digital gap in the market, if we seek to close it. The question really is what digital gap is there in the market today? A very significant one exists, and it's like this. The evolution of the technology trend is 2G to 3G, 3G and now to 4G. A lot has to be done, a lot of requirements, a lot of enablers have to be put in place for optimal 4G, LTE deployment. That is where I think the biggest gap digital gap exists today. We know that Nigeria has the largest internet volume, internet traffic in Africa today as we speak. It is basically on 2G and 3G, at best GPRS, at best 2G. But even at 3G, there are issues around connectivity. But the hope that really is, the aspiration really is towards 4G. Studies have shown that by 2020, that 4G connection, the broadband connection in Nigeria would actually outstrip what other countries see. So the hunger is there. We have the population, half of the Nigerian population is youth, and you have inspiring the Belgian middle class. You have industry that really need significant portions of broadband to operate optimally. So the market is there. It's really about what is we going to effectively move transit from 3G to 4G. Thank you.
My name is Mohammed Sherry. I'm the CEO of Sierra Leone Limited. In terms of the technology space in the whole of Africa, we all have the same problem. We have operators that have been operating in environments that have been on what I call legacy systems. The migration, the ecology, the evolution from 2G to 3G, and now we're talking about 4G and 5G. There are gaps there. Our operators, some of them operating in some of the countries around the region, are not ready to move to that next step, to move that digital divide that we all seek to accomplish. Now, we have to move away from technology. Technology is not the only issue in terms of the digital divide, in terms of the gaps that we have. The World Bank in a recent report pointed out that in what they call analog complements, the analog complements that we need to develop as countries, and as ministers here today, I would like to encourage every government in Africa, and particularly the sub-region, to ensure that we have the necessary skills, our people have the necessary skills, and our schools have the necessary curriculum in order for us to have to close that gap and move into the digital era. Without these gaps, even the workforce ministries, government ministries, digital revolution. Sierra Leone, I'm going to use Sierra Leone because that's where I'm operating. And Sierra Leone could be a very good example. We managed to get the first submarine cable line in the country. And what the government has done is also invested heavily in creating a terrestrial backbone for us, not only to have this international connection, but also to pass this connectivity throughout the country. Ministry, we have a very young and vibrant minister whose vision is to ensure that every household in the country at least enjoys some form of ICT or university experience in terms of usage. Now, we are promoting, we are going to divest some of you that are business organizations interested in entering this West African market. Sierra Leone is willing to divest 80%. 80% because Southcard Sierra Leone Limited is a wholly government-owned enterprise. And what we are doing is we want to create a PPP, public-private partnership, to the people who are interested to come into this sector and help us ensure that we gainfully harness this opportunity in terms of the digital revolution. Now, any country, no corporate anywhere can successfully implement all of these different changing environments that we might in the technology era. We all need that collaboration with the private sector. And I think the way forward is for public-private partnership in order to bring all hands on deck and achieve the necessary levels of
So, we need to add from the IAD Summit?
Yes, indeed. We were looking at this whole thing from the world policy perspective. Dr. Wandi made reference to issues we have here and management, assignment, infrastructure for technology utility. I think it's shown from the fact that we have two regulators, one for broadcasting and one for telecommunications. That act, the law that was referred to, actually is a very forward-looking law. We are actually involved in drafting that legislation. The intent behind that clause was we are supposed to have a converged regulator like we have often in the UK. And the idea there is that the issues about divergence as to what should be put and applied, because that's the regulator will be applying and essentially for communication services and not telecommunication services. Communication services. So first recommendation of stakeholder interplay will be for the two agencies to be merged. We have the NBC, Broadcasting Commission in Nigeria, and NCC. Merge the two agencies for optimal utility and management perspective for attainment of the broadband aspirations. That's the first, I think, most far-reaching that should be effective. Secondly, like my colleague did say here, private sector involvement in facilitation, particularly in the area of apps and content, key. We know that we have an agency called the Universal Service Provision Fund in Nigeria under the umbrella of the NCC. I'm thinking that agency should actively consider having a policy around, providing subsidy for app development, content development, etc., etc. I think someone made reference in passing to that option when you asked Mr. Chairman whether tax rebates would be a useful intervention too. So that's something else that we consider. Now, the backbone here, because of the federal structure we run, there's need for 3 or 2 tiers of government, 2 or 3 tiers of government in federal, state, and local government agencies to work together, particularly as state governments, to work together and to work in harmony with the federal agencies with a way to allow for streamlined approvals for the right of way, etc., as required for broadband penetration, fiber build-out, right of way, etc., site maintenance, site closures. Those are the broad interventions we work.
Please welcome a broad panel. Who is the chairman. This talk about now is
also brainstorm on new ways how we can activate some of the bottlenecks that is really progress of the actions that we do around. If you have the right, they are very active, many areas we can offer our infrastructure, regulatory and legal framework, policies, all this policies for means this document should come with 4 written policies that will encourage and motivate investors to really participate in providing some of the infrastructure needs that are required to be in this sense, that could lead to the independence of regulatory bodies and also that has independence to minimize interference of government that are motivated by some political ambitions. We've seen these are the issues, and a lot of lobbying that is happening with some players that use the political mechanism to kind of make for progress in the sector. So it's important that government and industry come together. There's to look at the bottlenecks, have a dialogue, platform, wherever they can agree on the way forward to tackle
I just want to follow up on something I said earlier. I think the problem that most African countries, I will probably remember naming specific ones, is that we don't have a technology roadmap. If you don't have a plan to build it out, you just put anything. The structure may not be sound. What we need is to devise that technology roadmap for each country, and then you go out to the private sector and say, guys, this is what I want to do for my country. This is a gap that I have. Come join me. Let's build this structure. And I think that's what we as Africans that want to promote technology and inclusion is really good to do. You have a technology roadmap and you find strategic partners to come in and work with you and make sure you achieve this goal. That being said, I'm also in the ACE African Post-Career submarine program, and the chairman of the assignment, routing, and restoration subcommittee. What we are seeing around the continent is that there are really gaps. Like in the West Africa region, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and perhaps I'll take Gambia out because they have Senegal. We only have one submarine cable line out there. So if there's a cut on that fiber, where out we go back to expensive. So these are ways, if we have a technology roadmap, we can go and ensure that you don't let people start enjoying the digital revolution or technologies, and then all of a sudden, because there's a problem, they are cost. So we also have to address not only the infrastructure element, but strategic planning has to be done on a continent basis for each of these countries.
Thanks. For those who just walked in, this is a panel on Africa Connected, and then we also acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, the Secretary General to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our next question for the panel would be on hybrid models. There was another talk recently about universal service obligation funds and things of that sort. So do these government industry funds work very well for digital divides, and what are some of the recommendations to get these kinds of things done?
It's not rocket science. That's it. The benefits that we have on this continent is that there is always a precedence in other jurisdictions which we can learn from, and we file a fund and to get space value. So we have this problem that we want to say a paucity of land infrastructure, and we flood, like they said, to where we want to be. Overcame the problem of land infrastructure. The same really it is. It's about designing and determining what you want to do and working towards it. But if I may just point out something, it's again, what do people want to see? What do investors want to see? People want to conduct. There are various levels of investors. There is the big one that has maybe 60 million subscribers who still wants to move on. There are others who can identify a certain niche that they're big. So if you want to have a subsidy regime, it can be tailored along various lines. But what needs to be done is to have some kind of assurance. The investors need to have some kind of assurance that what that they get good value and being protected by the government and environment. But a practical hybrid regime that we see is actually the interface between broadcasting and communications. Someone else was talking today about IPTV. IPTV, you can actually run effectively television over your telecommunications network very fully and very easily. And we feel in Nigeria that is the next big thing that will play out. And quite a few operators are already just looking for space in that regard. So really, it's about now what should governments do to stimulate that, because it said, like our colleague from Lincoln said, that is most effective way of getting value for spectrum. Now, how will government position, how will government stimulate an environment that will facilitate that effectively? That's the question. And it comes down to spectrum being the live wire of this whole thing. And we said earlier, merging these two agencies, but there are some very interesting options that can be considered to address the issue of paucity of spectrum. We can actually consider spectrum trading. We can actually consider spectrum trading. We can consider spectrum sharing. The regulations presently do not encourage spectrum sharing in Nigeria, but it's something that can be amended in view of the reality on the ground. So to effectively harness the next big thing, hybrid arrangement in the market, as we see, these structures are put in place. Radically review the way spectrum is managed in the country.
No, the case studies from Sierra Leone will share.
In terms of the UAD, to really understand what the UAD, what is UAD? Why do we need a UAD or Universal Access Fund It's because in rural areas where the operators do not find it economically viable to deploy their networks, I mean, I'm a businessman, I would not be inclined to go to those areas. But as a government, it is imperative that you provide the necessary services to your people. I want to categorically declare here that I see broadband internet access as a universal human rights now in the world. It is no longer a privilege for the few to just enjoy. But we've been having mixed results from the implementations that have been taking place around the continent. In some countries, it is, with collaboration between the private sector, things are working, moving in the right direction. We see a lot more areas connected than on others. I would take Rwanda for example. In Rwanda, I visited Rwanda and I saw that the UAD fund is really doing some miracles because even disputes among communities, the mayor will have a text on his or her phone and then respond to that person that was complaining. So I think that's one country on the continent that is doing well. In some other areas, in ours, for example, we have some challenges. And I'm so happy that we have our Honorable Minister of Information and Communication here with us, present. And I think we really need to divulge the UADF form, create it as a standing entity, and then we have bids from people, even the existing operators can bid for any project that we want. I think that's where we need to move. Because if we just leave it as another revenue generating arm of government, sometimes these monies, once they enter the consolidated fund, it is very difficult for you to take them out. I think we have to create separate entities to enforce this UADF so that we bring connectivity to the rural areas.
Have you any special provisions in place for underconnected underserved markets in Africa?
Basically, base saving new countries and I think to some of the inclusive of earlier material. So base on the west coast of Africa, yet there are some countries that are not on the west coast because we by time we